Nedum, psychologically, what's it like playing a team like Real Madrid who have that pedigree in a competition, though no matter when you think they're dead, somewhere, somehow, they come back to life and get you?
To be honest, I think the only thing that feels like this from my standpoint where I've played there is, say, for example, playing at Anfield, when everyone says in the second half the ball's just going to get sucked in at the top end. No matter what the score is, they're going to find a way to do it. But then you have Liverpool and then you have Real Madrid. I think that feeling that exists within European competition, there's nothing like it. I've seen Man City go there and lose in the worst way 2 seasons ago when they conceded 2 goals in added time. But that same season did it to Chelsea. And then come the final, you know, they're beating Liverpool. And it's like, well, how did they deserve this? I just believe that they are one of those teams, whenever it's the Champions League, no matter what the score is, the game's not over until that final whistle goes. They push, they push, they push. And something that was really vivid in my mind was when I watched the game against City 2 years ago in the semi-final. My Spanish is very limited, like yours, Dan. Obviously, I didn't live there, but it's very limited. And there was a banner that was up that read, "Another magical night for the Kings of Europe." And that banner was up before the game when they were 4-3 down. When the fans that have that sort of belief, the players have it too. There's something about that culture. And when that place gets loud and those players start believing, I think you need real impeccable game managers to be able to get out there with any sort of result whatsoever. And for them to push the way that they push, to have a manager on the sideline that's not flustered, it just adds to this perfect storm. And Bayern Munich, unfortunately for them, they've suffered the fate that many others before them have as well.
Carlo Ancelotti, of course, once again, getting all the plaudits after this win. Meanwhile, if you saw yesterday's show, of course, Stevie and Robert going at it about the substitutions. Tuchel coming out and saying, look, Harry Kane had a bad back. The argument is, look, come on, you could just push for 10 minutes more to try and get us over the line. How much is being made of that, Archie?
The major talk, even before this game, was still about Bayern's incompetence with appointing a new coach. The fact that Xabi Alonso's turned them down, Julian Nagelsmann, and then Ralf Rangnick as well. So if anything, the drum has now just been steadily beating again on who's going to be the new coach, because we know that Thomas Tuchel is leaving, even if he'd said it was very, very, very unlikely, direct quote, that he would stay on, even if they'd reached the final. There's not been as much focus on that, also because there's an acceptance that this squad has been thin. And Thomas Tuchel has talked about that quite a lot this season. Thin in terms of numbers of players that he can put in, and also how much they've crumbled under injuries this season. There's no doubt that this squad has a lot of quality in it. It's just, how deep does it go? It's not gone as deep as Leverkusen's, for example, and you look at the rotation with the results that they've got under Xabi Alonso this season. But quite a few players came into this game with knocks. Jamal Musiala, Leroy Sané, even Harry Kane has had this recurring back problem as well. So as much as you think, could they have dug in a bit more, I did understand why Thomas Tuchel did it ultimately.
Hansi Flick, Archie?
Indeed. If you'd said that after his first time at Bayern, I think you would have gone, okay, well, won a Champions League. The problem is what happened with Germany at the 2022 World Cup, and what's more, what's dented his image here in the country has been that documentary that came out, All or Nothing, about Germany's failed campaign. And he's mocked widely for saying, let's fly like the geese, and trying to motivate the players through one of these videos. And you can see how much or how little that the players were getting on board with it. And so because of that, he's got a real job on his hand, I think, to save his reputation. There was a lot of talk of him going abroad, but it doesn't seem to have materialized in a job there. So now I think Bayern and Flick are looking at each other as the last ones on the dance floor and looking and saying, you'll do, I think. So, yeah.
We've all been there.
Oh, no, have we?
It's Friday night, isn't it? There we go. That's where we go. Shaka, as a player, how aware are you that your manager isn't the first choice, or the second choice, or the third choice?
Very. And we had this discussion last week, and I was asking...
When you were on holiday last week again?
Well,
last month.
At some point, having this discussion about the success of managers who don't come in as first choice. And Gab corrected me in saying Carlo Ancelotti may be the exception to the rule. But as a player, you know that the further down the chain that management has to go in finding that manager, the less gravitas they have. The more likely they are that if things don't go well, the easier it is to get them out. And so how you approach that, and it depends really strongly on how the season starts, how things get going, because results change everything. But to start with, not an awful lot.
Where do you stand on Geese videos to motivate you, Nathan?
Listen, I've seen worse, my friend. I've done worse. I've had people singing new songs. I've had people saying, let's all hold hands and talk about this, share memories. Like, honestly, it is what it is. If he believes that it works, great. But if it's one or two players that don't believe in it at all, before you know it, that spreads. So I believe in trying to find ways to motivate your players, but sometimes you can look like the weirdo in the room if you pick the wrong thing. It seems like maybe Hansi Flick was guilty of that.
Which is worse, geese flying or the light bulb that Arteta pulled?
Well, it seemed to work, didn't he?
Well, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, to Nathan's point, managers try all sorts of things that just seem weird on the outside. But again, as long results define.
And then they get a dog.
How these things are perceived. Results define how these things are perceived.
Yeah.
Arsenal go on and start to win a whole lot of games, and all of a sudden they're sitting near the top of the table, challenging Manchester City, and that light bulb video is quickly forgotten.
Well, maybe it's not.
Well,
maybe that's the light bulb moment.
Oh, goodness me.
That sparks everyone into life, into light. Meanwhile, let's just remind... Go on, Archie.
Mikel Arteta has an intensity to him where I would agree with the light bulb idea. I'm not arguing with him.
That's true. Yeah, that is true.
You'd agree to a whole lot then,
Real Madrid are favourites going into the Champions League to win the trophy once again. Borussia Dortmund are underdogs. I imagine it's a tag they're more than happy to play with, Archie.
I think it suits them a lot that they're not playing Bayern Munich in the final, because they would have got trapped even further in that narrative of Bayern dominating them for the past decade or so since the 2013 Champions League final. And they can go in now with a lot less to lose in this final. They would, I think, have been happier to beat Bayern in the final, but also more okay with losing to Real Madrid because it's seen as much more of a free shot. And I think in some ways they also do have more of a chance because mentality and how they deal with these questions has been a big topic for Borussia Dortmund over the last few years. And for them to play with their backs against the wall is something that they've done well. There have been, I think, vibes of Chelsea 2012 in the way that some things have fallen their way. I think they are still deservedly in the final for the performances that they put in. They've defended exceedingly well and much better than they have in recent years in the Bundesliga. But look, I would still place Real Madrid as favourites, and I think 7 out of 10 times they will lift the trophy.
Of course, Real Madrid will be saying we're taking nothing for granted, Alex, but they are, aren't they?
I mean, yeah, of course they're the favourites. It's Real Madrid in the Champions League. But I guess one note of caution is that Madrid against what you might say are so-called lesser teams in the Champions League, they haven't always performed. I mean, just look at this Champions League campaign so far this season, certainly in the knockout stage. Remember, this second leg against Bayern was the first game that they had actually won because we had draws coming up to that point. And look at a tie like the Leipzig tie, for example, and they weren't particularly great, and they were outplayed, I think, by Leipzig. We've seen that in the past as well. So that's one, like I say, one possible note of caution. But no, still, this is Real Madrid. They've got a superior squad. They've got the players that you would think, if Real Madrid perform anything close to their ability, they should have too much for Borussia Dortmund. And yes, of course, everyone here is already basically taking it as read that Real Madrid's 15th European Cup is on the way.
Who do you want to win, Nathan?
Who do I want to win? Do you know, I think the way it was described in whereby, Dortmund arrive as real significant underdogs, but then if they lose, they can accept it because it's Real Madrid. I think as the years pass, that's my understanding of this of the Champions League. Real Madrid are the kings of it. It's an objective truth. So if they win, it's like nobody's surprised. This is what they do. But I think in this moment, for Dortmund to go on the run that they've been on, because having seen them in the group stages earlier in the season, I wasn't necessarily a believer that they'd find this opportunity. But still, they represent the underdog. And I think as far as football goes, there is a real sense of spirit that can come from watching the underdog and hoping that they do well. So I think I'll be obviously leaning towards Dortmund for this final. But realistically, everyone will have a belief that Real Madrid will do it again. And I tell you what, Dan, there's nothing more humbling in football than what I did a couple of years ago when I went to that Real Madrid museum and I saw the 14 trophies lined up. Like, there's football clubs and then there's Real Madrid. But maybe in this moment, Dortmund can have something which inspires the rest of Europe as well.